Shalom, Akim, Shalom, Kal Halal Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Rakah Hakudah, showing us in double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to Yakim out there pushing the word in sincerity and truth. This is the brother Ariala. On this lesson, what I want to tackle briefly is the history of scribes in the Bible and their relevance to how the manuscripts were put together. There's currently, I guess, this back and forth that's going on with the Sakari camp about writings and Paul's writings and who wrote the book of Hebrews. And when you look into many of the actual writings in the scriptures, many of those books are not written themselves by the said author. Many times, those books were dictated, by the said author, and there were people, understudies, or people who had that position to write things down for the prophet or for that said king. Okay, and amanuensis is as you see right here on the screen is a way that people were employed, and this system actually became popularized greatly by the Hebrews, and so popular that the Greeks, the Romans, and many other nations round about were like, wow, okay, we can learn a lot from these guys and their systems. Okay, now just to show you, you know what? I'm gonna read this real quick in Wikipedia. I'm gonna come back to this article in Wikipedia and touch on a few things. An amanuensis is a person employed to write or type what another dictates or to copy what has been written by another, and also refers to a person who signs a document on behalf of another under the latter's authority. The term is often used interchangeably with secretary or scribe. So we see the histories of the scribes and how important they were during the time of the Greco-Roman period because they preserved a lot of burnt history. But that tradition of the scribes and their importance to the nation goes all the way back into the time that we came out the Egyptian captivity, when we start to get a lot more tedious with writing things down instead of just having things be oral tradition. Now, going into the book of 2 Samuel, the 8th chapter, when it's talking about King David. All right, in 2 Samuel, the 8th chapter, and the 15th verse, it says, "And David reigned over all Israel. And David executed judgment and justice unto all his people. And Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was over the host. And Jehoshaphat, the son of Ehilud, was recorder. And Zodok, the son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, were the priests, and Seraiah was the scribe." So you have recorders, you have scribes, and just real quick, you go into this word scribe, and we can get the word recorder as well. You get the word scribe, scribe, right? It says to count. The word is shapar. Okay, as y'all can see, shapar, H5608. To count, recount, relate, number, take account of. See that? They're taking account of things being said. Rehearse, declare, to count exactly. They could be also taking down, money, as far as treasury type of things, just make the numbers within the military, whatever it is, several different things of that nature. But to go down into the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon is really where I want to go and get the first two subsections. It says scratch, to scrape, to polish. It says especially to inscribe letters on a stone. Hence, to write, a scribe, right? And it's giving you guys can go and check out these the correlating scriptures. It says especially, subsection A king's scribe, i.e., the friend of the king, whose office was to write his letters. See that? It says a military scribe who has the charge of keeping the muster rolls. All right. A lot of books, a person skilled in sacred writing. All right. And so these are the people that were assembled during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah to bring everybody together and record down who had returned back from the Babylonian captivity. And from that Babylonian captivity, the office of the scribe was just like, man, extremely important because of the scattering and just the keeping up with everybody and the legacy of the nation, right? So this tradition of Aminoaces, if I'm saying that right, goes all the way back, and we see it even recorded here in the book of 2 Samuel, the 8th chapter. These men saying, okay, these were the recorders and the scribes keeping up with things that the king's saying, letters that are going out, especially, like King Solomon and all the proverbs that he spoke. King Solomon was going in. There had to be a person writing those things down, okay? And so this was a part of the office of the Levitical priesthood at the time. First Chronicles 24:1 says, now these are the divisions of the sons of Aaron, and the sons of Aaron, Nadab and Abihu and Eleazar and Ithamar. But Nadab and Abihu died before their father and had no children. Therefore Eleazar and Ithamar executed the priest's office. And David distributed them, both Zadok, the sons of Eleazar, and Ahimelech, the sons of Ithamar, according to their offices in their service. And there were more chief men found of the sons of Eleazar than the sons of Ithamar. And thus were they divided among the sons of Eleazar. There were 16 chief men of the house of their fathers, and 8 among the sons of Ithamar, according to the house of their fathers. And thus were they divided by lot, one sort with another. For the governors of the sanctuary and the governors of the house of the Most High were of the sons of Eleazar and of the sons of Ithamar. And Shemaiah, the son of Nathaniel, the scribe, one of the Levites, wrote them before the king and the princes, and Zadok the priest, and Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, and before the chief of the fathers and of the priests and the Levites, one principal household being taken for Eleazar and one taken for Ithamar. Okay, and so you can read about that if you want and go into that. Now, when you look into First Kings 4:1, so King Solomon was king over all Israel, and there were the princes which he had, Azariah and the son of Zadok, the priest, right? Elihorep and Ahiah, the sons of Shisha, scribes, Jehoshaphat, the son of Hilud, the recorder. All these things, you can go to the recorder and see just a remembrance, and keeping all these things a record to record. This was that tradition, right? Looking into Solomon, right? Proverbs 25:1. For these are also proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied out. So this tradition of writing things down, writing what things that the king said, goes way, 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 way back. So it makes sense for Paul not to necessarily have specifically wrote many of the books of the Bible, but you can say that about all the books. You can say that about all the prophets, okay? Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, all of them most likely had understudies that were writing for them, okay, including Moses and everybody else, okay? So the different songs were being, different prophecies were being dictated. Now, going back to this article in Wikipedia, I'm going to go down to origin and secretarial uses. It says, the word originated in ancient Rome for a slave at his master's personal service, within hand's reach, performing any command. Later, it was specifically applied to an intimately trusted servant, acting as a personal secretary. All right. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul is shown as the author of the book of Romans, right? However, at the end of the book, Tertius of Iconium describes himself as the scribe who wrote the letter. You see that? And so we even see that when we go to Romans chapter 16, verse 21, 22. It says, Timotheus, my work follow, and Lucius and Jason and Sosipater, my kinsmen, salute you. I, Tertius, who wrote this epistle, salute you in the Lord. You see that? And so he was one of Paul's understudies, and Paul dictated things to him, and so he wrote them down. Okay? This was very, very, very common. So we have to understand the nature of how these, things come to be. If you're a king sitting on the throne, you're not going to sit there and write a letter. You'll have a trusted fellow servant, and you just tell them, write this to King such and such. I, sir, something such and such and such, do command that, 10,000 horses be rendered to the service of Prince such and such for whatever war. And someone will write that down, and then you have an actual person go and take the letter. Okay? Very common. Now, this is an article I pulled up from veracity.net, and it was specifically over 2 Timothy. It says why 2 Timothy was written under Paul's authority and why we should care. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing. You can type it in and figure it out. I'm going to skip down to the part that is most pertinent. Going down, I'm going to read a little bit above the highlighted section here at the top. It says, part of the differences can be explained by the fact that the letters of Paul were written over a 20-year period of time. Paul, like any other person, surely changed and developed and matured over that 20-year period. Do you think acting right exactly the way you did 20 years ago? Yet, while this explanation makes some sense, it does not completely explain all of the differences in vocabulary and content, among other things. However, new scholarship has helped to provide a more complete answer as to why we can trust the integrity of the Bible. In many, if not most cases, the Apostle Paul rarely did the actual writing of his letters. If you do not believe me, simply read Romans 16:22, where Paul's secretary, Tertius, acknowledges that he is the one who wrote the letter under Paul's authority. Here were Paul's ideas, but Tertius was effectively the guy with the pen. Ancient letter authors, such as Paul, typically employed an amanuensis, right, which is basically a fancy word for secretary. But such a person had a very interesting role in ancient Greco-Roman society, right? But more important to contemporary concerns about the Bible, new scholarship has showed that in many cases, the amanuensis was given a fair amount of latitude to style and mold the letters written by the person who actually authorized the letter. Such recent scholarship has helpfully illuminated by evangelical scholar Ben Witherington, blah 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 blah, adequately explains why we can still have confidence that letters like 2 Timothy were ultimately authorized by the Apostle Paul himself, while still giving the amanuensis permission to adjust style and vocabulary as appropriate. So technically speaking, the critical scholars could be correct in stating that Paul never wrote 2 Timothy, but having the pen in hand is not really the issue. The central issue is whether or not the letter was written under Paul's direction and guidance, that is, under his authority. In this sense, there is good reason to have confidence that Paul is truly the author of these letters like 2 Timothy. And so one of the greatest examples of this outside of Paul we know is the scribe Baruch. Baruch, wrote a lot of the portions of even the prophetic portions of the book of Jeremiah and was understudy to Jeremiah. And so when you read here in Jeremiah 36, I'll read it. It says, "And it came to pass in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that his word came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Take thee a roll of a book, and write therein all the words that I have spoken unto thee against Israel and against Judah and against all the nations, from the day I spake unto thee, from the days of Josiah even unto this day. It may be that the house of Judah will hear all the evil which I propose to do unto them, and that they may return every man from his evil way, that I may forgive their iniquity and their sin. Then Jeremiah called Baruch, the son of Neriah, and Baruch wrote from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of the Lord, which he had spoken unto him upon a roll of a book." Right? And Jeremiah commanded Baruch, saying, I am shut up. I cannot go into the house of the Lord, right? And so, boom. Therefore, go thou and read in the roll which thou hast written from my mouth the words of the Lord in the ears of the people in the Lord's house upon the fasting day. And also thou shalt read them in the ears of Judah, in the ears of all Judah that come out of the cities. Right? And so not only did he write it, he was sent out to go and preach it. Baruch was sent out to preach it because Jeremiah had so many haters at that time. So, you know, these things are very common, and it just takes a little bit of extra study to understand these things, and it's just a willingness to understand what we're a part of and the history that goes into it. There's many layers to the onion. Okay, now this going into the mysteries of the Bible.wordpress.com. This particular is called Prophets and Scribes. I'm not going to read all of this for you. Good history here. I definitely suggest you guys can type it in. Like I said, Mysteries of the Bible, Prophets and Scribes. It'll pull up. Skipping down to the highlighted section. It says, generally, prophets delivered their prophecies spontaneously, perhaps accompanied by music and dancing. We read about that in the scriptures a lot. But their words were later written down in a highly structured poetic form. And no one knows by whom. The prophets themselves may have later written down and polished their own pronouncements, but in many cases it is believed disciples of the prophets wrote down their teachers' words for later study and teaching. Often these disciples edited the text to fit new circumstances and in certain cases probably even added unto the prophecies. The book of Isaiah suggests this process as its writings cover a period of some 200 years. Not only is this far too long a period for one man to have prophesied, but there are obvious differences in writing style that strongly suggest the work of 2 or even 3 writers. Only the prophecies in chapters 1 through 39 of the biblical book of Isaiah are believed to have been made by the historical Isaiah. Prophetic works were also preserved by scribes. This method of preservation is vividly described in chapter 36 of the book of Jeremiah. We read that when King Jehoiakim of Judah forbade Jeremiah to enter the temple to proclaim his prophecies, Most High told the prophet to write down all of his words and have them read to the king. Jeremiah then dictated all his past prophecies to the scribe Baruch, who copied them down in a scroll. Baruch then went to the temple where he publicly read Jeremiah's words. When officials of the king heard about this, they sent for Baruch, had him read the prophecies to him, then took the scroll from Baruch and told him to go into hiding along with Jeremiah. The officials then went to the royal palace and fearfully read the prophecies to the angry king, who promptly burned the scroll. But the prophecies were not lost, for the Most High ordered Jeremiah to have the scroll rewritten, and Baruch again took down his master's words. The new scroll probably formed the basis for the first 25 chapters of the book of Jeremiah. Okay. It says in 582 BC, Jeremiah and Baruch were forced to take refuge in Egypt. There, Baruch continued as Jeremiah's secretary/scribe, writing down prophets' pleas that the Israelites be faithful to the Lord. While in exile, Baruch probably wrote most of chapters 26 through 45 of the book of Jeremiah. According to the later tradition, Baruch also wrote the book of Baruch, a work found in the Apocrypha. However, scholars now believe that the work of Baruch was written centuries after the scribe's death. And we can all argue about that, right? But the point is the history of prophets and kings having their words, proverbs, and preachings and songs written by somebody else. This tradition goes back way before Paul and led into what we see in the so-called New Testament. Okay, and so not only were the Israelites doing this, other nations was doing the same thing, which you see in movies and different accounts and stuff like that. It's an ancient tradition. Okay, and it was just perfected by the Hebrews. You know, the Israelites perfected it. Okay, and so a lot of other nations took from that and everything like that. Now, when I'm reading these articles, you have to make sure to chew the meat and spit out the bones. Don't be simple. Okay, Be grown-ups. And for you newer people that really are still learning everything, just understand that there was a history of the prophets and kings having their words written by somebody else, and they simply dictated them. And as things were rewritten, recopied over time, several of the scrolls had to be recopied so they could be preserved. They were written on lambskin. Lambskin deteriorates, okay? So they had to be rewritten, okay, and updated. And yet we had a lot of things being burned and destroyed when our temples were destroyed. And so things had to be rewritten, okay? And that's fine. The Most High had things go down the way He wanted it to go down, and it has led to what we have now. Okay, and so there is a level of faith that you have to have, and that's with anything, of course within the scriptures, but a lot of the ancient history is after it being rewritten several times. Okay, and so I wanted to go into that briefly, touch in on that. You guys can look at it more, look up these different words that I brought out more if you want to. Lord willing, this kind of brings a little bit more understanding to the overall points that have been made by other brothers and elders and apostles. And so just please leave a comment or a question or whatever you have in the comment section, and we'll go from there. Call hello Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors once again to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to Yakim. Pushing the word in sincerity and truth. Shalom.